Titan and its crew would need to descend 13,000 feet to the ocean's floor in 2.5 hours. The pilot and 4 passengers squeezed inside the tight submersible, where they seated awkwardly against the interior of the hull as engineers bolted the vessel shut from the outside. The 5 of them would be entirely enclosed and cut off from the water and air of the planet from this point until the finish of their dive. At 8 in the morning on June 18, 2023, Eastern Daylight Time, they had left the Canadian port city of St. John's, Newfoundland. They were ready to start their mission to dive to the Titanic as they were around 375 nautical miles to the east at their current location. Along with British billionaire Hamish Harding, French deep-sea explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and British-Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his son Sulman, Stockton Rush, president and founder of OceanGate, the company that operated the sub, was also traveling in the sub. They descended from the mothership, the Canadian research icebreaker Polar Prince, into the turbulent seas of the North Atlantic using a floating platform. The submarine's white, tube-like appearance swiftly vanished beneath the waves as it started its steady ascent to the most famous shipwreck in history. After an hour and 45 minutes, contact with Titan was lost. The crew would exhaust their oxygen supply in around 94 hours, regardless of where they were, if their vessel was still intact. A global search and rescue mission that was working against the time was about to start. The rescue effort was completely underway by the morning of June 19. Together with Canadian military personnel and nearby commercial vessels, the U.S. Coast Guard has begun a search effort 900 miles east of Cape Cod. Rear Admiral John W. Morgan of the Coast Guard said in a press conference that it was a difficult location and a remote area, however they were using all of their resources to find the craft.
In this highly complex search operation has been robust and immensely appreciated.
They were already up against the clock. According to oceanographer Peter Gerges of Harvard University, while diving deep into the ocean, an OceanGate meant that you were about a half week to a week out from help. Furthermore, it was puzzling that it took the Polar Prince's crew almost 8 hours to inform the US Coast Guard that Titan had vanished. In addition to having to find a 22-foot-long submersible in waters that were 2.5 miles deep and twice the size of Connecticut, the US and Canadian authorities had to do it with 63 hours of oxygen still remained in the submersible at the time of Morgan's press conference. Additional difficulties arose. There was no dedicated recovery system or emergency radio beacon on Titan. They couldn't have been pulled up, anything could have been sent down, or the surface vessel might have helped find the sub, according to Gerges. Titan could be drifting aimlessly on the surface in the absence of a beacon. The structure of the craft was, however, the biggest worry. Titan was a prototype carbon fiber submersible, in contrast to conventional submersibles, which have a pressure hull built of steel or titanium. The fact that it went dark might indicate that its hull was in danger. It might imply that the recovery of the vessel would be difficult. It might imply that everything had failed. The crews conducting the searches divided their efforts across the ocean's surface and depths, despite having less information at their disposal. By June 20, commercial deep-sea companies, private vessels, military aircraft, and a submarine had joined the search alongside US and Canadian law enforcement. Ships and aircraft visually searched the surface for indications of the sub's white hull. Under the waves, rescue ships pounded the water with sonar in an effort to find the vessel, and acoustics specialists were called in to listen for underwater noises. The absence of a recovery system on board the Polar Prince prompted the French Maritime Ministry to divert its Atalante vessel, which is outfitted with a subsea remotely operated vehicle, to help with the mission. If the ROV came across the sub, it may attempt to free it from any entanglement, and aid in bringing it to the surface thanks to its deep diving capabilities and remotely controlled cutting arms. The search teams acknowledged having their first lead on June 21. Rescuers revealed that for 2 consecutive days, underwater sounds had been picked up by monitoring vessels at intervals of 30 minutes. Experts surmised that Nadia Let, a veteran diver with the French Navy, would be familiar with the periodic banging technique given to stranded submariners to aid rescue searches. Captain Jamie Frederick of the 1st Coast Guard District rejected the notion that the crew had already perished and that the goal of the expedition was to recover the sub, saying, "This is a search and rescue mission 100%. We'll keep using every resource we have at our disposal to try to locate the Titan and the crew members." 5 surface search vessels and 2 remotely operated underwater vehicles (ROVs) were looking for Titan throughout the day. On the morning of June 22, additional underwater robot vehicles were expected. However, they arrived at the hunt terribly late. The only way to get them to Newfoundland was by airlift, according to Gergis. Before they could even start looking underwater, they had to put the ROVs on ships and sail them out. By the time the underwater search of the seabed had really picked up steam, with the ROVs crisscrossing the ocean floor methodically to comb for the Titan, less than 12 hours of oxygen would be left on the sub. Likewise, on June 21, a special Navy recovery system that can raise up to 27 tons of machinery out of the water arrived in St. John's. However, it required an extra 24 hours to be prepared for deployment. Because all rescue equipment ultimately needs to be transported by ship, Gergis claims that we just don't have the capacity to deploy a huge arsenal of rescue equipment. The salvage system's willingness to participate in any rescue now hung in the balance. Titan was predicted to run out of oxygen on June 22 at roughly 7 a.m. Eastern Time. But that argument was immediately rendered irrelevant because the search was ended by 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time on June 22. The offshore vessel Horizon Arctic, which had arrived at the search area the previous evening, launched an ROV that discovered Titan wreckage 1,600 feet from the Titanic's bow on the seafloor, some 12,500 feet below the surface. This discovery was made public by the U.S. Coast Guard. The vessel's nose cone, which was the first piece of debris found, was found in a sizable debris field that also contained the pressure hull's front end. According to Morga, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. In a statement, OceanGate said that it now believed that its CEO Stockton Rush, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman Dawood, Hamish Harding, and Paul Henry Nadia Let had tragically perished. These men were true explorers who shared an unmistakable spirit of adventure and a deep passion for discovering and preserving the world's oceans, the author writes. As opposed to Stockton Rush, who thought adventure lay at the bottom of the ocean, many entrepreneurs see space as the next frontier. Unanswered questions. The U.S. Navy revealed, upon the discovery of the Titan's wreckage, that on June 18, close to where the ship was diving and lost contact with Polar Prince, it had picked up an acoustic signature consistent with an implosion. The search and rescue action was started despite the fact that the on-site commanders in charge of the search effort had already been informed of the information, and that the sound of a potential implosion had not been confirmed. The U.S. Coast Guard is leading the investigation. The task force has been joined by the French and British maritime agencies as well as the Canadian Transportation Safety Board. 5 significant Titan fragments have so far been discovered 12,467 feet below the ocean's surface, and they were hauled to shore. The Coast Guard said it may have found human remains among the wreckage. OceanGate declared on Thursday that it has ceased all commercial and exploration operations. And the 10's 2 days episode. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world, and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.